So let's try that again. So again, I'm Devin Kearns. I'm Associate Professor of Special Education at UConn in the Special Education program in the Department of Educational Psychology. And I'm excited to tell you about some really great doctoral student opportunities. And I'm going to go ahead and share a presentation I prepared to tell you about our program. So I'm going to start that over. So for those of you who already saw me start, I'm going to start it again. So the purpose of the webinar is for me to tell you about our exciting doctoral program opportunities. And this is one of our students. So this is Katie Leonard. She is now a fourth-year doctoral student in our program. And she, like many of you on the webinar, was a teacher, and she taught for many years and finally decided she wanted to take the next step and get her PhD in special education. And she was also a student in one of the opportunities that I'm sharing with you today. And so she's a great example of the kind of student we're looking for. So many of you are former teachers, and we're excited to tell you about it. So I'm going to give you some details about the program and some background about the program, details about the opportunity and background about the program as well. Okay, so just to start you off, to tell you a little bit about UConn, this is the gorgeous University of Connecticut campus. Our education school is one of the top 25 public universities in the nation. It's a great place for students in all kinds of disciplines to join us to do education research. Our special education program is a highly recognized program nationally and to a certain extent internationally as well. It's the 16th ranked specialty program and 16th ranked program in special education in the nation, according to US News and World Report's most recent rankings. So I'm thrilled to tell you that joining us at UConn, you'll be in a program that's a world-class program where our faculty are recognized across the country and across the world for the great work that they do. So I want to start off by telling you that so that you're aware that you're joining some great folks. I speak mostly of my colleagues. I do good work myself, I think, but my other colleagues do really amazing work as well in various areas I'll describe to you. And so you'll be joining a great group of folks. Here are our faculty in the program. I'm going to briefly describe their interests so you kind of have a sense of the faculty in the program. So in the top left is Mary Beth Bruder. She is an early childhood faculty member, so she does work on early childhood special education, working with students with more severe disabilities, and she's actually based at our health center. She has a whole set of additional opportunities I'm not talking about today. If you're interested in early childhood special education, you can email me about that, and I can tell you more about Mary Beth's program because it's not listed on the website opportunities I talked to you about before. Below Mary Beth is Michael Coyne. Mike is one of our faculty in the literacy area that we have. So Mike's work is on typically early vocabulary. He works with kindergarten and first grade age students to a large extent, understanding how they best learn vocabulary words. And he's done a lot of important work in that area. He's received funding from the U.S. Department of Education and other agencies to do the work that he does. So he's highly recognized in the field. Then you have Jen Freeman. Jen is a leading expert on classroom management. She is an expert in positive behavior interventions and supports, PBIS, as many of you know, and she's one of the leaders of the National Center on Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports that works also with the University of Oregon and the University of Missouri. So she's a leader in that area. I'll tell you just briefly about myself. I joined Mike in the literacy area. My focus is on teaching students with reading difficulty in the upper grades 3 through 6 typically. And my focus is on designing intervention programs and testing intervention programs, and most recently, examining the neurobiology of students participating in instruction. So some of the work I do is about doing brain imaging before and after intervention to understand how the brain changes, and using some new technologies to do that work. In the top right, you have Allison Lombardi. Allison's focus is on post-secondary transition. So transition from secondary classroom schools to post-secondary life for students with disabilities, talking about having transition plans. As some of you may know, that's a feature of special education in high school and secondary school. And Allison is a leader in this area. She has a newly funded grant from the U.S. Department of Ed to understand how to assess students' ability to do good transition and teachers' ability to provide good guidance in that. So she's a really well-recognized faculty member in that area. Joseph Madaus is another faculty member in the area of the and does some of the same work that Allison does. He's been recognized for his work by the Council for Exceptional Children's Division of Transition as one of the leaders in that area. Natalie Ollinghouse is also in the literacy specialization. Natalie focuses on writing. She's an expert on writing and writing standards across states and looks at how different states use standards information, how they decide what is important for students to learn in writing. And she's done that work for many years and has also been funded by the Department of Education. Brandy Simonson joins Jen Freeman. She's the co-director of our Center for Behavioral Education and Research. She focuses also on positive behavior interventions and supports like Jen, and she's one of the co-directors of the National Center for Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. And so she is another leader in that area. She and Jen are the leaders of the Northeast PBIS network, as well as some of the leaders of a national or a regional conference we host. They also are leading the state of Massachusetts in implementation of classroom management and behavior supports for students. So they're real leaders in the field. So that's the special education faculty I wanted to introduce you to. The goal of the program is to provide PhD students with a highly individualized program that includes, as it says here, coursework and applied competency in 4 broad areas. So you have when you become part of the program, if you choose to apply and if you're accepted, we have the 3 focus areas that I talked about. We have the literacy, the positive behavior interventions and supports, and the transition, as well as the early childhood that is somewhat separate. But for those 3 programs, there are 4 things that we want students to do regardless of the program. 1, you come here to deepen your knowledge of the area of interest. So if you work with me in reading, one of the courses you take your very first semester is on the psychology of reading and reading disability and understanding how it is that students read, what causes reading difficulties, including language comprehension difficulty and dyslexia. So we deepen your knowledge of your content area. The second thing we do is teach you how to be a good researcher. So part of our focus is not only on you understanding the content of special education in your focus area, but also being able to do good research. One of our goals of our program is for students to leave and to be able to do high quality research that helps us understand better unexplored topics in the field, building on what we know already and helping us do even better work to help students in schools. So we not only want you to learn your content, we want you to be able to answer new questions and extend the field's knowledge. The third thing we focus on is university teaching and professional development. In addition to research, the other thing that we prepare students to do is we prepare students to be high quality teacher educators. So we want you as faculty not only to leave our program knowing how to do good research, we also want you to have excellent skills as a university faculty member. It will be a natural transition for many of you from the work that you're already doing with students. We use a lot of the same tools and techniques. We also have a real emphasis on providing really specific skills. So we teach students specifically how to do things like how to do classroom management and how to design secondary and tertiary behavior support systems. In reading, we teach our teachers exactly how to design reading lessons across different content areas. And one of my courses, I teach my students in for secondary literacy methods, we learn how to actually implement lesson structures to introduce new texts to students. We explain very specifically how to do things in the program. And one of our goals for you as a doctoral student is to leave our program being able to provide students at other institutions where we hope you would get a job with good knowledge of special education teaching. So we develop that skill in you. And then finally, service, which refers to a broad range of sort of competencies. Basically, service is about providing service to the field by doing things like journal reviews, by serving on local and national boards, and supporting even the university and meeting some of its goals, serving on committees and things like that. So we want you to understand how to be a good contributor to the field in that way. It's not the primary focus. Our primary foci are the first three of these things. Service is something that we teach you toward the end of the program to prepare you for your work as a faculty member at another institution. So in terms of how this looks, in terms of what your life would be like as a doctoral student, the goal, what you'll be doing is you'll be getting hands-on research experience with these leading experts like ourselves. You're going to be conducting research. So we actually have many projects that are running in the field. So if you work with me and my colleagues, we actually do work in the schools. We implement reading interventions, or we do tests of how to improve or to see how students' academic skills need to be developed. For example, we're now currently testing an app to screen kids for dyslexia in early childhood and preschool, as well as early elementary school. And so you would actually be doing work in the schools. We actually test students in the school. So it's not this sort of ivory tower approach. We focus directly on what would be happening in schools. So it's research at our major research university, but it's focused on being hands-on in the classrooms. Special education is a critical shortage area in the US, which means that there are actually a lot of jobs available for university faculty. In fact, the opportunities I'm going to describe to you in a moment have been designed by the federal government to provide opportunities for new faculty because there simply aren't enough knowledgeable special education faculty across the country. So it's a critical shortage area. As you probably know, there are not enough special education teachers in general in the US. There are also not enough special education faculty members to teach those teachers. And so we want you to have the opportunity to learn those things. And of course, you're joining a program that's consistently ranked among the top 20 in the US. What's great to know is not only do we have good special education faculty, we also have great faculty to teach you about methods and statistics. We have some of the leading experts in those areas as well. So you'll be getting skills and coursework from some of the leaders in the field across a number of areas. So as I said, we have scholarship and fellowship opportunities at the Neag School. These are a couple of our students. This is Ruben on the left. He's recently graduated from our master's program, considering the doctoral program. On our right is Emily Tarkonish. Emily came to us from Clark University. She worked there for several years and then decided to go back and get her doctorate. So she is a Ph.D. candidate now at UConn. So that's an important opportunity that she participated in. So these are both students who either are considering the PhD program or already part of it. We have a number of opportunities. The first one I'll talk about is the Dean's Doctoral Scholars Program. This is a school-wide program that is for students across the Neag School of Education that comes with 4 years of tuition, a monthly stipend to provide you with support as you participate in the activities at school. You get to do all kinds of research, both in special education, and we have a focus on providing ways to interact with faculty in other departments. And faculty in our program or other programs nominate students. So we can nominate you if we think you're a good fit for it for a Dean's Doctoral Scholar award. And I'll talk more about the stipends and the full tuition in a moment. I'm now going to talk about the training grants that you probably saw me mention online. And so I'll describe each of these to you. First, this is the NCLII, stands for the National Center for Leadership and Intensive Intervention. So this doctoral program leadership grant is designed to train faculty, as I said, because there aren't enough faculty in the US across in this area of special education to teach our new teachers. So we have funding now for students who have a specific interest in intensive intervention. So we have 4 doctoral students who can participate in the program. We plan to fund 2 of them this year and 2 of them next year. We may fund all of them this year, depending on how many students we have. There is a core curriculum to focus on intensive intervention that all students participate in. And so you will not only learn from the classes that I already described, you also complete some online modules to help you develop your understanding of the principles of intensive intervention. What's really great about this opportunity is that not only do you have your advisor here at UConn, You also get to work with faculty at other universities. So the faculty include faculty members in special education at the University of Texas at Austin, the University of Minnesota, Vanderbilt University, the University of Illinois, Chicago, Michigan State University, and so on. And so these are faculty at some of the leading institutions in special education in the country and in the world. And you have the opportunity to work with and learn from those faculty. We have 2 national seminars where all the scholars in the program come together and learn from the faculty. And we also design opportunities for you to work with faculty at other institutions who may be interested in the same things you are. We also, with that, have opportunities for you to become an intern at other national centers. So for example, there's a National Center on Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. You could become an intern on that national center to learn about other things going on at the OSEP is the Office of Special Education Programs. You can also work at the American Institutes for Research, and they're the ones who manage the National Center for Intensive Intervention, NCII, and you could work with them as well. As I said, you get these connections with these top researchers. Basically, the universities that are involved in this leadership grant are also among the top 20 in the nation. So you are having the opportunity to work with not only us, but some really great faculty at other institutions. The other really exciting opportunity we have is an opportunity to work with our colleagues at Boston University. So like the other programs, it involves full tuition support. So now let me explain to you about some kind of key ideas about the way the program is designed. So one is that it comes with full tuition support. What does that mean? That means that we will fund all of your classes. The program does not require you to pay for any of the classes that you take. So that's a really key aspect of the program. As you may know, doctoral programs can be very expensive. We cover the entire cost of tuition. The second thing to know is that we provide a monthly stipend for students, and we provide university health insurance, which is really excellent health insurance. And so we provide those things to you. What you might infer from that, which is true, is that we're a full-time program, and it's designed to be on campus. So some of you may be wondering if you can do it online. Some of you may be wondering if you can keep your current job and do that. I unfortunately have to tell you that the focus of this program requires you to be on campus and to do this full time. We provide funding for you to do this. We also provide you resources for travel to national conferences and other expenses related to the projects you'll participate in. For example, we provide funding to support doctoral research. And when you first come to the program, we provide you with funding to purchase a laptop and funding for other expenses, including like books and software that you may need in your classes. So we try to provide you with funding to do things that you want to do as part of your program. But it definitely is full-time. And this program is exciting because we're focused on doing this with Boston University. And our faculty colleagues at Boston University focus on education policy and teacher education, how special education teachers are evaluated by administrators. Some of you may know or have experienced that school leaders, administrators don't always understand very well how to evaluate special education teachers. And so our colleagues there are working on how to improve that. There are some faculty there also focused on the wraparound services provided to students with disabilities. For example, providing them with mental health supports, not only at school, but also at community centers and also within doctors' offices and so on. So they do different kinds of work, but it's all complementary. So we focus, as you know, on intervention and on the 3 areas that I described to you. What's exciting is that this opportunity will link you up with researchers who do kind of complementary work. What's great about this is that there are also opportunities to do internships with our faculty friends at BU and also with regional centers and national centers that focus on some of these same topics, similar to the NCLII opportunity I described to you. As I said, there is full funding available to you, so you will be funded to do this work. The university has standard funding rates that change every year in terms of the amount you receive based on your expertise. You're funded such that you get paid for essentially 20 hours of work per week. You work 20 hours per week doing research with faculty, and the rest of your time is spent on classes. And those are the only responsibilities you have in the program. And so you basically, we're giving you a salary that's commensurate with doing 20 hours of work a week. If you sort of do the math, so to speak, it works out to between $30 and $35 an hour for doing the 20 hours per week, but it is 20 hours per week and it's only during the academic year. We do often have opportunities for students to do summer work. Some other students opt to do other things, do some work with actual students, do some other professional development opportunities in the summer, and that's another option people have. We have, again, though, this full graduate funding for the students. So those are the main things that I want to share with you about the program. I want to take additional questions from you so I can clarify some things that may not be clear to you. And as you see there, the application deadline is December 1st. Just really briefly about applying. So these are important things to know about writing your application. I see that we have a hand raised. Let me go to I gotta figure out how to do that one. Let's see. Don't know how to do question and answer. We have 2 people raising their hands. I don't know how to do that. Let's see. I don't know how to actually, thought I had this down, but I don't know how to do if you want to just type in the chat what your question is, that'll probably be the easiest way for me to answer. Okay, I see that someone put this in the chat, so let me bring that up. Okay. Okay, so question about the GRE. So question about the GRE. You are required to take the GRE, and that's a university requirement. So we don't have specific cut points for our program about the GRE, and so we just want you to take it, do the best job you can on that. The university does take that into account. It's not the primary thing we consider, but it's part of the application process. And the question about not taking the GRE by December 1st, I don't know about that, but we do allow students to complete the applications. They have to complete the application, but we do allow them to, for example, have letters from other faculty after December 1st. So if you can't get it done by December 1st, you should still apply, and we can adjust accordingly. But you do need to take it. And I see there's another question about the master's degree. If you already have the GRE, if you already have a master's degree, do you need to take the GRE? Yes, the GRE is a requirement for the Ph.D. program, and so you still have to take the GRE even if you have a master's degree. In terms of listing of all course content that will be part of the program, let me answer this first question. There isn't a place that I can tell you that lists all of the course content. Let me go to the web page for the program. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to go back. I'm going to answer all the other questions as well. Let me stop sharing my screen and let me go to share with you. I'm going to go to the website and show you that. So let me screen share the website, and I will answer all the other questions that I see. So just bear with me for a second. Okay, so this is the website that some of you may already have looked at. There is, on this page, there is the PhD handbook at the very bottom, which gives you guidance about what's required for the program. It's a lot of detail. We don't typically require or even ask students to read it. If you'd like to get into the details of the courses, you can. I'll summarize in brief what the classes are like. So every semester for your first 2 years, you take a professional seminar with special education faculty to learn about the disciplines. We talk about the research, good teaching. We talk about some of the theories behind special education. Then every semester for your first 2 years, you take quantitative methods classes where you learn statistics and how to do those things. I can tell you myself, I'd never taken a statistics class when I went to graduate school, so you shouldn't be afraid of that. You should, if you've not taken math in a while, I hadn't taken math since high school when I started the program. So I did my doctorate at Vanderbilt, but I hadn't taken any statistics classes, and so you should not feel scared of that. In addition to the methods classes, then you take a range of content classes that are of interest to you. If you already have a master's degree, some of your credits can be transferred, so you don't necessarily have to do more than 2 years of classes. Depending on how much coursework you already have, students take either 3 or 4 classes a semester. And we typically don't expect students to take classes after the first 2 years or after the first 2.5 years. After that, you do internships with your doctoral advisor where you work one-on-one with them on new projects, and eventually you're focusing on the other requirements for becoming for graduating, which include what's called a major area paper, where you do a comprehensive literature review, and then your dissertation proposal and your dissertation. So those are those things. So let me go to the chat to answer some other questions that came up. Okay, so getting back to the question about the GRE, if you've already taken the GRE, if you've taken it within the last 5 years, you can use the same scores. You don't need to take it again. If it's older than 5 years, then they require you to retake the GRE. So that's university policy. There's nothing I can do about that. So if you've taken the last 5 years, that's great. So how would I get a letter from, okay. Yeah, so I said something about a letter. So what I meant is letters, it doesn't have to be from faculty, letters of support or letters of recommendation really from other people. So it could be a school principal, it could be, if you took a master's degree, it could be from faculty in master's program. That's what I was talking about. So you don't need letters from us because we obviously don't know you. What I meant is letters of recommendation from other people. One thing I'll tell you, I'm sorry that the graduate school website is not clear about this. We put it on our project link page, but the graduate school does not make clear that we expect letters of recommendation. We do expect 3 letters of recommendation. It can be from principals. It doesn't have to be from faculty. It can be from other close colleagues. If you're, if you participate in some professional organization and you want something from a leader in that, you're welcome to have that. So we don't expect particular kinds of recommendations. We just are excited to hear about your passion for the work and your dedication to doing great work in our program. And so then that comes to a question about the programs. There's a question about, are all the programs on campus and full-time? Yes, so I mentioned with the BU one, but it is the case that all the programs are on campus and full-time. There are programs in other departments for administration and so on that aren't necessarily like that, but for us, the program is in person and full-time. There are a few classes that can be taken online, but the vast majority of classes are on campus. I will tell you that we do school-based research. So on some of the projects, students may have 3 days of classes and they don't come to campus the other days, but they will be, you're typically going to be in schools working on different things. And depending on the project you work on, there may be opportunities to work from home. But at least for your first year, you should expect to be on campus or in a school 4 or 5 days a week. So that means that you want to be available in that way. Over time, there may be more opportunities to work from home and so on, but at the beginning, you should expect to be on campus consistently. Okay, so let's see. So let me go through. The next question is, okay, when you apply, are you applying to one of the specific opportunities or are you applying to all of them? That's a great question. So you should write a general application that in 2 ways. One, you should write an application stating your interest areas. So this is important. You want to state your interest areas. If you're interested in literacy, you should mention that. If you're interested in PBIS, you should mention that. Transition, you should mention that specifically. You also want to mention specific faculty you're interested in working with and why you think those are good faculty to work with because of your interests and so on. We want you to share with us your passion for the work. If you're interested in a particular kind of opportunity, you can tailor your letter to that. So if you're interested in intensive intervention, you can mention that in your letter. If you're interested in policy, you can mention that in your letter. You can say which of these opportunities sounds exciting to you, but we don't expect you to choose one. And we work as a faculty team to identify students who might be a good fit for one of those opportunities. I can also tell you that we have funds available for students who we accept and we think are a good fit for one of the opportunities. We have an opportunity for them to visit to learn more about the program in February. We haven't set the exact date to visit campus to sort of get a feel for what it's like to be here. So to summarize, you're not applying to a specific opportunity. You're just writing an application where you indicate your focus area, the faculty you'd like to work with, demonstrate your passion for the work, and so on. Yeah, and someone asked, is this in the personal statement? That's right, that's in the personal statement that you'll write. You'll be writing a personal statement that describes all of these things. So it mentions that, and I should use that term, sorry. And the guidelines for the graduate school, I mentioned the personal statement, that's exactly what this is for. The personal statement is designed to is designed to focus on that. There are a lot of questions. I'm going to make sure I'm just going to do them in order. And then, so again, the question about the GRE not being taken by December 1st, that won't be a problem. You just need to make sure the application is in by December 1st. Do it as soon as possible. We start looking at the applications around December 15th. You have to turn it in by December 1st, but if you haven't finished those things, if you haven't finished the GRE and so on, try to do that as quickly as you can. We'll start looking at the applications in mid to late December. We don't typically make decisions until about the second week of January, and we try to notify you as quickly as possible after that. I can't give you an exact date for when acceptances get sent out. It's almost always before February 1st. So last year it was about the third week of January. So it differs a little bit by year, but it's about that every year. Let's see. Yeah, and so then it says you started talking about guidance for the application, the personal statement. That's right. So I already mentioned that, but I'll just summarize again. You want to say, one, why you're excited to be in the program, what is exciting to you, but why do you want a doctorate is basically the question you're trying to answer. And when you do that, you want to think back to this webinar and the slides I shared to kind of think about the ways in which what you're doing aligns with the goals of the program. So we sometimes have people who apply who are interested in administration. We don't do that work here, right? This isn't focused on this. This is focused, as you know, on being a good scholar, doing research, and being a good teacher educator. And so you want to make sure you tailor your personal statement to that. The next thing you should do is indicate faculty that you'd be interested to work with. You're not committed to that, but it's an opportunity for us to see how good a fit you are for our program. One of the things we find is that we want to have students who are excited to be here and to be working with folks in this area. And so we want to know who it is you're interested to work with. And then you want to say more about what your specific interests are beyond just faculty so we can get a sense of that. And if you think it's aligned with a particular fellowship, you can tailor your personal statement to that opportunity, but you don't have to even mention a specific opportunity, the NCLII, the Project Link, or even the other Dean's Doctoral Scholars. You don't need to mention those specifically. You can just tell us about your interests. As a faculty team, we evaluate the applications and think about which students are best fit for which opportunities, but we do that based on what you tell us in your personal statement. So when someone asks, it would be hard to do this for full-time for 4 years, scary to quit my job. I understand, and it was scary for me too. I decided that I taught for 7 years, and I decided that for me, it was worth it to do the program and become an expert in this area so I could then teach teachers. I came to this work because I'd done some teacher education as a teacher. I did presentations and so on, and I really felt frustrated that I'd learned some things that many of my colleagues didn't know. So I decided I wanted to go to graduate school to get a degree so I could help other teachers not end up where I was in terms of, not knowing a lot of things. In my first couple of years, I didn't know a lot. I actually wrote in my personal statement about how I had not done a good job as a first and second year teacher, or my students didn't learn to read very well because I didn't have the skills, about how I developed those skills over time. And so that's why I went to graduate school, and I was passionate about that. And yeah, I took a pay cut to come to graduate school. And so the question is, you have to think about it as a long-term investment, that it's not a totally limited period of time, but it's a limited period of time. So you develop the skills to allow you to be successful in the future as a researcher and as a faculty member. And we have many of our students go on to successful careers as faculty. Some people work for state agencies. Some people work for think tanks like the American Institutes for Research. So a lot of different paths you can take using the skills you acquire in the program. But what's important to know is that you will come out of this program with good skills. Your degree from UConn is worth a lot in terms of its recognition. If you tell people you have a degree in special education from UConn, people look at that seriously. And so you can be confident that if you do a good job in the program, and most of our students do a really great job in the program, you will come out of here with a degree that's worth a lot. But it is a commitment. You have to decide, is this something I can do for that period of time? If you're wondering if people can do it in less time, it is occasionally true. Students can do it in 3 years, but it's pretty rare. And because there's a lot of commitments and a lot of learning to do. There are classes at least for 2 years, and a lot of students take 1 or 2 classes in semesters after that. And so trying to do that plus all the requirements to get to the doctoral candidacy, which means you're not just a student, but you now are ready to do your dissertation, go through all those phases in 3 years is asking a lot, and students don't typically do it. Let's see. So someone wrote, how do we know which faculty to mention if we haven't met them? The website is a really good place to look. So we all have updated our faculty profile pages on the UConn website. And so you can look at those to get a feel for the kind of work that each of us does. So when I applied to graduate school, I didn't know the faculty member that I applied to work with. Doug Fuchs was my doctoral advisor at Vanderbilt, some of you may have heard of. And I had never met him. I didn't know him. I did, before I applied, I scheduled a time to talk to him on the phone. So you're welcome to email us and ask us about things that we're doing, and we will talk to you on the phone. We're happy to give you information. We're happy to email with you. We want you to get to know us. We want you to use the web resources that you can, but we want to know that you think you're a good fit too. So we're really happy to talk to you. We'll schedule time to do that. I typically schedule 20 or 30 minutes to talk with students, tell them more about the program and so on. Let's see. Is there an instruction guide for the personal statement you follow? There's not a specific instruction guide. I'm giving you this information that I find helpful. There isn't a template. You don't have to do it exactly the way I said. I'm sort of just telling you things that we've seen in successful applications before, but you can do it in a different way. But as you can well imagine, the goal is to communicate essentially why you want to do this, why you're passionate about it, and why you're coming to UConn, right? So that's that. Someone asked if the webinar will be available since you missed the beginning. Yes, as soon as we're done with this, we're going to try to post it online immediately, maybe a couple of days before we can get that figured out, but we will post online for you all. There's a question about university professors getting a pension. So do you get a pension? So yes, so we are part of the American Association of University Professors, and and as state employees, we are part of the pension system for the state of Connecticut. There are different retirement programs you can select from when you become a faculty member here at UConn. It differs by institution, exactly the way that your pension works. And so I can't tell you specifically what it'd be like, but it is in that way similar to being a teacher. You still have that kind of security about once you leave the program. Again, it will differ by institution, so I can't tell you exactly what it'll look like because universities are different. That's part of when you apply for faculty jobs, you ask about like, what are your benefits like and your pensions and so on, so you can get a sense for that. The great question about time commitment. So this is important to understand. There is a service requirement associated with this. So the service requirement is that for every year of funding we provide you, you do 2 years of service to the field. You can actually do that service as a teacher in a classroom. You are not required to get a faculty job to do that. You can be a reading specialist, you can be a teacher, you can be a student, like you can work with students in a private clinic, et cetera, but there is a requirement that you do 2 years of service to the field in a broad way. So basically, if you do 4 years, there's an 8-year requirement. As I said, it doesn't have to be as a faculty member, it just has to be service to the field of education. And so it's not a really big deal, but it's important to know that that's a requirement of fellowships. If you have a graduate assistantship that doesn't have that requirement, nor is that requirement part of the Dean's Doctoral Scholars opportunity, that is not part of that either. So you don't have to have there isn't a service requirement associated with those opportunities. It is only for the National Center for Leadership and Intensive Intervention and the Project Link that have the service requirement built in. You asked about how many applicants we anticipate. I cannot really tell you the numbers for that. Typically we have about, I would say that, I don't want to say for certain because we just don't know this year. It's really varied over the years depending on how much advertising we've essentially done. We've looked far and wide. We want to get the best and brightest folks in the field, folks like yourselves. And so we've put out there's a lot of different places. And so we expect to have a pretty large applicant pool. But I encourage all of you to apply. If you think this is a good fit for you, we want to hear from you. We want you to apply. We're excited to find people who are excited about this work. And if you're accepted for one of those fellowship opportunities, we will have a day for you to come to campus to learn about. We actually provide travel funding for you to do that. So if you're accepted and want to make sure it's a good fit for you, we'll have that opportunity for those two fellowship programs. Let's see. Okay. I only have a year of solid classroom experience and minimum teacher requirement. That's a great question. So it sort of depends. So the answer is there's not a requirement. The answer is that typically university faculty in education have typically had at least 3 years of experience in the classroom. If you've been a paraprofessional, if you worked in a private clinic, something like that, that counts. So essentially there's not a specific kind of requirement for what it means to have been an educator already. If you are in your first year teaching, so all you've done so far is done your student teaching as a recent college graduate, I'd recommend waiting a couple of years. You have some more experience under your belt before you apply the doctoral program. You want to understand what you think about teaching, what you think about the field, and you also want to have enough of that applied experience that you can speak to the kinds of things that teachers have to handle in schools. We don't have a specific requirement, and we really encourage you to think about any work you've done with students, K-12, even with Emily that I showed you a picture of before. She actually worked with college students, and so any kind of work that you have done in education, that counts. And so you shouldn't feel like there's a specific requirement, but I would say if you have just finished your degree in education, this is one of your first jobs, I'd recommend a couple more years before you made that decision. I waited 7 years to do it, but many of my colleagues did wait just 3 years because they knew that they wanted to do higher education, and that's fine too. The question, is there a salary schedule available to look at? There isn't. You can look up online salary scales for university faculty. I can tell you that, the salaries start out somewhere I'd say in the mid-range of teacher salaries, but sort of the long-term range is higher than a teacher can have. So typically faculty do end up with pretty good salaries. There's no guarantee, and it does also depend on the kind of institution you go to. So if you go to major research university like UConn, the salaries will be higher than if you are at a university that focuses primarily on teaching. The salaries are still good, and so you will have a decent salary, and it's very likely that your salary would end up higher than the salary you have as a teacher. But I can't guarantee it. That's individual by students. I will say that if you work for a think tank like the American Institutes for Research, the salaries there, even starting salaries, are very high. $100,000 a year, even starting out. I don't want to guarantee you that either, but salaries do tend to be high if you want to do that kind of work. And so sounds like there are amazing opportunities, a great time to join. If you didn't receive grant funding, might you still be accepted? Yeah, so that's a great question too. So if you aren't selected for one of these opportunities, we think you're a good fit for the program, we have other top opportunities available. We have graduate assistantships. Those aren't guaranteed year to year. What I can tell you is that the special education program, the University of Connecticut, has received about $11 million worth of funding in the last year, which means that we have lots of opportunities for students to participate in research as graduate assistants. We essentially pay you to do specific work. The fellowships don't require the fellowships require you to work with your advisor, but it's not on specific projects all the time. It may change from year to year. Graduate assistantships are tied to specific research projects. You'll be working on a specific project. What I can tell you is that historically, we have been able to provide full funding for all students who participate in the program. So we are able to fund students with graduate assistantships. They're almost identical to fellowships. There are two differences. One is that there's not guaranteed conference travel, and two is that there aren't additional expenses covered like a laptop and books expenses and so on. There's not guaranteed doctoral funding for doctoral research. What I can also tell you is that we work really hard to make everyone's experience successful. And, you shouldn't sort of think about those things differently. So that basically is a great way to do the program. If you aren't a good fit for one of the fellowships, or you're not the most competitive for one of those fellowships, you shouldn't prejudge what that means. Then we offer graduate assistantships. They aren't guaranteed year to year, but I can tell you that with $10 million of funding in the last year, we have funding for students for the next 4 years to participate. We've never had a time when we haven't been able to provide funding for students in the program. Are there medical benefits? Yes. So every student receives university health insurance. University health insurance in the state of Connecticut is very, very good health insurance. It's $15 copay for pretty much everything, which is something that really many places don't offer anymore. So it's almost certain to be as good as your school district's health insurance. I don't want to guarantee that because I know some school districts are very generous in that way, but it's likely to be very good. It's compared very favorably to insurance that you have. There are in-network versus out-of-network differences and so on, but it's excellent health insurance. Okay, let's see. You mentioned you might fund for this year. Okay, yeah. So someone asked if I said that we have available 9 spaces for students. So there are 5 on Project Link and 4 on the National Center for Leadership and Intensive Intervention. We are obligated for the National Center for Leadership and Intensive Intervention to fill 2 of the 4 spots the first year. We can fill all 4 if we have students who are a good fit for those. If we have 4 great students, we'll fill them. Same thing for Project Link. For Project Link, we don't actually know how many students. There isn't a set requirement for that one. We'll take as many students as we think are a good fit for it. So it is likely that if you can't apply this year, there will be funds available on the fellowships next year. I can't guarantee it. We're going to look at our applicant pool this year. If it's, there are a lot of really amazing folks like yourselves, then we will take, we can take up to 9 students this year. But it's likely that I would say we'll probably take between 4 and 6 students this year and then take the remainder next year. But we can't prejudge it. We're just going to take people who are a good fit for the program. That's our goal, is to do that. And then related to that is this. So this is a great question. So if you want to do Project Link or you want to do NCLII, is it just these 2 years or can you do them in other years? It really is actually just for these 2 years that we're accepting students. So you could apply in 2 years from now, for the 3rd year from now, and that would be fine, but those opportunities won't be available anymore. If we get new opportunities, we can get new funding sometimes for doctoral programs. We might get a new program, but the funding for those 2 programs will be out after these 2 years. But again, we always have graduate assistantships. And again, we've always been able to fund students who want full funding, although it is, as I said, not guaranteed. Also, the graduate assistantships do not come with a service requirement. So if you wanted to do the program but not with a service requirement, you could actually opt not to do the fellowship and do the graduate assistantship route. And again, we almost always are able to fund students that way. Okay, in terms of credits, so can you transfer master's credits, or do you have to take all the credits in the program? You can transfer master's credits. It sort of depends whether they're elective credits or used towards a degree. I am not an expert in this. You have to ask the graduate school exactly how it works. What I can tell you is most students are able to transfer credits. Some of my students actually only take 3 classes a semester. One of my students has, children who are in high school. And so she didn't want to have, one of her 3 children in high school, the other 2 in college, but she didn't want to have a lot of she wanted to be able to do the program. She doesn't have another job, but she didn't want to be spending all of her time on classes. And she's a very hard worker anyway. So she takes 3 classes and she has a lot of credits from other areas. And so you can transfer those credits. So I can't tell you exactly. What I can say is most students take about 2 years of classes. That particular student will probably take an extra semester because she's only taking 3 a semester, but you can do that. That's up to you in terms of exactly how many classes you want to take. It can end up you spend a little more time in the program. We can provide additional funding after the 4 years is up for those. In other words, if you need a 5th year, we have funding often available for that. I can't guarantee you that, but we've always been able to do that. We often have extra fellowship funding available to fund students for the 5th year. So is the question about, is the university health insurance only for us? No, you can get it for a family, and we provide funding for the entire health insurance. So if you want or need to have your entire family on the health insurance plan, we actually will pay for the family health insurance. It's actually very expensive for the project. That's part of for the grant, but it's part of the guarantee for the grant. So there's actually no out-of-pocket expense for the insurance. That's all paid by the grant opportunity. If it's just you, that's fine. Either we estimate that some people need it just for themselves, some need it for themselves and a spouse, and some people need it for more students. We provide health insurance regardless of what your need is there. Is there help with housing? There's no housing involved in this, so it's not. It can be not especially expensive to live around UConn, but I don't want to guarantee you anything. We often encourage you to talk with students. I can put you in touch with current students in the program so they can tell you about their experience so far. You could actually even talk with Katie, who I showed before. Another student, Sarah Wilkinson, she has offered to talk with students as well. She's in our behavior program. She's also a fourth-year student doing that. So you are encouraged to talk with them. Again, get in touch with me and I'll connect you with both faculty and students who might be in your area. Is there campus housing available? There's not typically campus housing available. People live various distances from campus. I live about 20 minutes from campus, and my rent is okay. But it's sort of okay is in the eye of the beholder, so it's kind of up to you. But again, I can put you in touch with students who can give you some guidance. When I started as a faculty member, one of my colleagues here actually helped me with house hunting. He and his wife found some pots for me. I didn't take any of them, but they were actually happy to help with that. So, we can give you some advice about where to go and so on, but we don't have there's no specific housing available. Okay. So I've answered all the questions in the chat. Someone asked how IDA is going. I'm actually doing this webinar from the DoubleTree Hotel in Portland, Oregon, where the International Dyslexia Association conference is being held. So I'm here. The conference is going great, I think. We did a great we had a fun presentation we did yesterday, and I am presenting with one of my staff members on another exciting project we're doing on Sunday. So those are the things. Oh, I actually didn't answer this question. So when does the program start? So when you apply, you're applying for fall of 2020. So that's when the program starts, is fall of 2020. So that's a great question. So you'd have from now until then to kind of prepare for that and to move if you're coming from the area, which we have students do. I moved from California to Nashville for my doctoral program, and that's, we've had students with families move. One of my students, former students, moved from Seattle to UConn or to Connecticut to do the program. The program, and someone asked exactly when it starts. Yes, it starts in late August. Typically the first day of you typically start a little bit with your research requirements a little bit before classes start. So typically it's literally the 23rd of August almost every year. I don't know why that date, that we start with the assistantship. So basically be, mid to late August 2020 would be when you'd be expected to start. Okay, the questions seem to have been exhausted. You guys asked really great questions. Let's see. Okay, so question is, if a student is passionate about joining but doesn't qualify for the funding or funding used, might they still be accepted? Yes, so you can be accepted. We're gonna accept students based on whether you think you're a good fit for the program and whether you have some of the skills you need. It doesn't mean you have to have writing skills necessarily. It doesn't mean you have to have any kind of, you don't need to have done research. I want to be really clear about that. I had never done research before I did my doctoral program. You just need to have been a teacher and be passionate about taking this next step. There's no expectation you've ever done a bit of research. I had never done any research when I did the program. We teach you to do research. That's our job, is literally teach you to do research. So you shouldn't feel like you have to have research experience. You just need to know, you need to know for yourself you want to move into this area. So if we think you're a good fit for the program, then we will accept you. And as I said, we actually almost always are able to offer support for students. In other words, if you want to do the program and if you want funding, if you'd like to, work on a project, you can do it. If you just, so we'll offer that to you. If you just want to, do the class and you want to pay for them yourself, you can do that. We still have the expectation that you are full-time in the program, so because it's designed that way. You can't really do it another way. So just, you should know that, because part of that work where you work 20 hours a week, that's critical to building your skills. So I often say that I built my research skills most when I worked in schools, and all 4 years of my doctoral program, I worked in schools with kids. And so that was a really important part of how I learned to run research projects and how to design new research opportunities for kids. So we accept you based on your qualifications, and then we can tell you what opportunities you have available to you. And at the very least, we would be able to offer you, almost always offer you, a graduate assistantship. I can tell you for next year, we can definitely do that. And then for subsequent years, we almost always can do that. So really, if we accept you, we'll have funding opportunities for you. We are just looking for students who are a good fit for our program and for our faculty. Let's see, is your email the same one that the link for the webinar came from? I'm not sure. I think that it is. I'm just going to put my email in the chat. So this is it. So it's devin.kearns@uconn.edu. So you can email me there. Someone said, I'm currently a teacher, former lawyer, but I'm scared about GRE. I get it. Like, I was scared too. It actually, like, I would have done it sooner, but I was really nervous about the GRE. There's like nothing I can tell you about that, except like I empathize. Like, I totally felt the same way. It's a requirement of the university, and that's basically all I can say about that. I studied some vocabulary and I did my best, and that is what it is. But again, if you can't take it by December 1st, we can take it very shortly after. That should be fine. Question about whether you're required to teach undergrad classes as part of the assistantship. So it really varies by year what you'll be doing with your work. So some of the graduate assistantships do primarily involve teaching. We have both undergraduate and master's students. So our teachers that we're training, they start in their junior year with their education classes. So I teach one of the first class they teach. So I teach kind of methods. I teach like how to write a lesson plan, how to provide good instruction. That's one of the first classes they take in the education program, is with me in that area. It's not required that you teach that. So in reading, we have a senior class that focuses on learning reading methods. I then also teach a master's level class on how to teach students in secondary school who have reading difficulty. So that is a class that is a master's class that I teach. What typically happens is that as part of the graduate assistantship or the fellowship, some semesters it will be primarily focused on teaching. So there will be times when you would be focused more on teaching than on research. We want you to be a good teacher when you leave. So we want you to participate in that process. Which specific classes varies, but we would like you to have, different experiences. Many of the students so far have really focused on the master's classes, but you could teach undergraduates. But I do want to be clear, you don't teach freshmen and sophomores. So you teach students, they have to actually apply separately to the ed school. They apply to Neag School of Education in their sophomore year. They're actually not accepted to the education program until the end of their sophomore year. So you're working with students who are already definitely committed because they have elected to participate in this. So you should know that, at least in our program, even if you work with undergraduates, they're committed undergraduates. You're not trying to convince first year students to do work or whatever. You're working with students who are already definitely committed. Let's see. This is a great question. So let's see. Okay. So just so you know, Stephanie Dion-Jones, who is our director of communications, she said that if you respond to the email invite, she'll get it in her office and they'll forward it to me. So you will be, if you use that email invite, you will be able to get it to me. This is a great question then about, is it year round or only the academic year? So it's, there's not an expectation of doing work in the summer. There's often summer work available. That's less, I can't be as confident you could get summer work. The summer work is at the same rate of pay as during the year work. So it can be a decent supplement for that. I can't guarantee that all the time. There's sometimes not as much work because we do work in schools. There's not as much work to do in the summer. I have funded students for either the whole summer or part of the summer before. So there are opportunities to work in the summer, but if you'd like the summer to do something else, you can. I have a student who worked at an organization doing other work with teachers during the summer. I know some people who work with, tutoring students in the summer and that kind of thing. And some people just want to take a break in the summer, and that's an option too. So you are not expected to work in the summer, and sometimes there are opportunities. And so if no summer, what do the students generally do? It's kind of up to you. We have a lot of different things, and sometimes I can provide funding. I'm less confident I can always provide funding during the summer, but we can a lot of times do that. So yeah, this is a great question about the insurance. The insurance does go all year. So yes, you're not stuck with the summer, like not having insurance. It's just the stipend that is just for the academic year. I totally understand that you have kids and like that's important. Totally get that. And I will tell you that we have a mix of students. We have some students who have families and have made this commitment. So you would not be alone in that. We have multiple students who are in that situation. So you should do that. And we have also folks who, their children just went to college and they're excited about trying something new. And so you shouldn't feel like concerned that you've missed the boat if you've been teaching for 15 years and you've been raising children. That's not a problem. We understand that a lot of folks are coming from that experience. So that's, so you should know that we know that we work with a lot of folks like that. A lot of my doctoral students have had that experience. Not all of them. We don't expect that you have had that. I, went to graduate school. I didn't have a family, my late 20s. And so that's fine too. There isn't an expectation you've had anything. We just want to know you're a good fit for the program. So how many students do we expect to accept? I can't tell you for certain. We're going to take all the students we think are a great fit, that we think are going to be successful in our program. So if we can fill, we have the 9 slots, but if we have 11 great students, we'll have opportunities to provide graduate assistantships for some. So we don't have expectations about that. We take students we think will be a good fit for the program. So that's it. So it's not about, we don't have a quota of any kind. We focus on fit and which students are the best fit for the program. So that's what it's all about, is about whether or not you're a good fit. And I've given you some kind of guidance about how to think about that in your personal statement. And again, if you haven't gotten everything I said, we'll have the webinar available for you to go back to, and so you'll have that opportunity to look at that again. And I'm glad at least one person thinks it's awesome. So I will tell you, it is, I think, awesome. I'll just say personally that I really feel fortunate to work with really great colleagues at UConn. Everyone that I showed you on that screen is a really wonderful person. One thing people always say about UConn is that everybody's really nice, in general. And I really think it's true, and especially in our program, I feel really privileged to work with the colleagues that I do. We're really collaborative, we are really friendly, we do things together as faculty, and we share that same feeling with our students. We've all been teachers. We have that feeling of being teachers and trying to be inclusive and so on. We're in special education. And so we care about people and about meeting people's needs and helping them from where they are to success. And so I think that you'll find that if you apply and you do the program, you'd be happy here. We try to make it a really positive environment for people. And I think we've been pretty successful in that over the years. So I would tell you that if I were applying to graduate school, I would be happy to come to UConn. I'm probably biased, but I felt the same way about the doctoral program I did. But I think that the collegiality and friendliness across our program is a real credit to just the kind of culture that's been built in special ed here. And so I hope that I convinced you that some of us are nice. I try to be nice. I think I'm pretty nice. I don't know. But anyway, so good. All right. So someone said, thank you for your time and, and for being an advocate for kiddos like yours. And yeah, well, I'm, happy to be an advocate. I mean, I care deeply about kids with reading difficulty, including dyslexia. And so that's great. And someone says, I am nice and friendly and funny. Well, all right, I'll take it on a Friday afternoon for sure. All right, well, I think we can leave it there. This will be available online. If you have a friend who might be interested, who wasn't able to do it, please send this along to them. Again, you can email me with any questions. I can direct you to faculty. You can email faculty directly. Don't worry about that. Like, they are expecting your emails. We've told all of the faculty to be ready for student questions and to have excited students to talk with about the program. So I will end it there. Happy Friday. I'm really excited to get applications from lots of you. I think we're going to have a great year with that. And so I look forward to reading awesome applications. So, all right, we'll leave it there. Happy Friday, and look forward to hearing from you. Bye.